More than just a show, The Andy Griffith Show was a comforting escape-a small-town world of laughter, kindness, and timeless values. But behind those familiar faces were real lives, often marked by silent struggles, heartbreak, and private sorrow. Today, we honor the beloved cast who brought Mayberry to life. Some are gone, others lived quietly out of the spotlight, but all left behind a legacy that still touches our hearts. Andy Griffith wasn't just the lead, he was the show's moral compass. With a warm voice and a steady presence, he made Sheriff Andy Taylor feel like the dad, mentor, and neighbor we all wish we had. But while millions saw a calm and grounded man on television, Andy's private life was far from peaceful. Born in Mount Airy, North Carolina town that would inspire Mayberry Griffith's southern roots, shaped his identity. At age 34, he stepped into the role of Andy Taylor and became a national symbol of wisdom and kindness. But his family life carried deep wounds. He adopted 2 children with his first wife, Barbara, but struggled to save his son, Andy Jr., who battled alcoholism and died tragically at just 38. That loss haunted him for the rest of his life. In the 1980s, Griffith was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, leaving him temporarily paralyzed. After months of grueling therapy, he returned to television as lawyer Ben Matlock, another role that brought him fame and financial success. But inside, friends say he often sat alone for hours, quietly grieving, carrying pain from failed marriages and the death of his son. Andy Griffith died at 86 from a heart attack, buried just hours later on Roanoke Island per his wishes. No funeral, no fanfare, a private end to a public life. Frances Bavier brought Aunt Bee to life with warmth, humor, and a touch of sternness that made her feel real. But behind that loving character was a woman who struggled with typecasting, regret, and isolation. A former Broadway actress with sharp wit and intelligence, Bavier felt trapped by the role that made her famous. She clashed with Andy Griffith behind the scenes, and only 4 months before her death did she call him to apologize. "The role consumed me," she admitted. She never married or had children. After retiring, she lived alone in a modest house in Siler City, North Carolina, with a dozen cats. Locals rarely saw her, yet she quietly left $100,000 to the town's police force, a final act of gratitude that matched her character's spirit. She died at 86, suffering from multiple health issues. Though her estate was modest by Hollywood standards, her legacy was far richer in heart. Nobody made America laugh like Don Knotts. His portrayal of Barney Fife, anxious, trigger-happy deputy with just one bullet, earned him 5 Emmy Awards and endless love from fans. But the joy he gave us often came from deep, personal pain. Raised in poverty in West Virginia, Knotts endured a traumatic childhood. His father, suffering from schizophrenia, once held a knife to Don's throat. After his father died, Don grew up withdrawn and insecure, using comedy as a lifeline. He married 3 times, fathered a daughter, but often felt inadequate as a husband and father. Despite his success, he was plagued by anxiety, hypochondria, and loneliness. In his final years, he suffered near blindness due to macular degeneration and withdrew from public life. He died in Los Angeles at age 81 from complications of lung cancer. He was buried near John Ritter, his close friend and co-star on Three's Compagnon Man Don, considered a son. His gravestone features Barney Fife, a role that never really left him. Howard McNear's portrayal of Floyd, the lovable and endlessly talkative barber, gave the show some of its most charming moments. But in 1963, tragedy struck, suffered a massive stroke that paralyzed the left side of his body. Remarkably, Andy Griffith brought him back to the show. He was filmed sitting down, propped up with props and clever staging. His dedication was inspiring, but it came at a cost. He suffered breakdowns, forgot lines, and eventually had to leave the show. He died from pneumonia at age 63. His bravery, quiet suffering, and determination to keep working made him a true, unsung hero of Mayberry. Thelma Lou was love, loyalty, and warmth wrapped in a Southern charm, and so was Betty Lynn. On The Andy Griffith Show, she gave Barney Fafond Vuorsa gentle heart to believe in. But Betty's early years were far from idyllic. She was born into a troubled home. Her mother fled an abusive marriage while pregnant with Betty, hiding in fear. Raised by her maternal grandparents, Betty learned resilience early. She found escape in music and acting, joining the USO to perform for troops during World War II, often under dangerous conditions in the Far East. She sang, danced, and brought laughter to soldiers, earning their deep gratitude and admiration. Though she once got engaged, Betty never married. Instead, she gave her love to other Shermother, friends, fans, and later to the town of Mount Airy, North Carolina, where she moved in her final years. There, she became a living part of Mayberry's legacy, always smiling, sharing memories, and attending fan events with sincere affection. Even in her 90s, Betty remained spirited and sharp, working on her memoir and meeting admirers until her final days. She died at 95, peacefully and surrounded by the town that embraced her as one of their own. Her life was a quiet, triumphant journey from hardship to joy, anchored by the simple grace of being kind. Otis Campbell, Mayberry's lovable town drunk, could have easily been a one-note character. But thanks to Hal Smith's genius, Otis became a fan favorite man who staggered through the town jail with dignity, comedy, and surprising layers of humanity. Hal Smith was a voice actor, character actor, and World War II veteran. After the war, he built a strong career in radio and television, voicing beloved characters like Winnie the Pooh and Owl for Disney and Goofy for commercials. Yet, Otis remained his most iconic live-action role. In real life, Hal was a devout Christian and a non-drinker, making his portrayal of Otis even more impressive. He often visited children's hospitals in character, using his fame to spread joy. Hal passed away at 77 from a heart attack in Santa Monica. Fans remember him as the man who made even the town drunk feel loved. Howard Sprague, the mild-mannered county clerk with a nervous laugh and a heart of gold, may have seemed like just another quirky Mayberry resident, but actor Jack Dodson brought a depth and humanity to the role that made Howard unforgettable. A stage-trained actor with impressive theater roots, Dodson had serious dramatic chops that often went unnoticed beneath the show's comedic surface. Off-screen, Jack was a devoted family man, married to actress Mary Dodson, who worked as a set designer and script supervisor. Their 35-year marriage was strong and private teen oasis in a demanding industry. Jack avoided the Hollywood scene and sought joy in low-key living, often spending his free time gardening, reading, and acting in small theater productions. When he was diagnosed with cancer in the early 1990s, Jack chose to fight it on his own terms. He declined aggressive treatments, not out of despair, but from a desire to spare his loved ones the pain and disruption. He continued working, even appearing on shows like St. Elsewhere and Newhart, never letting on about the struggle he was enduring. He passed away at 63, quietly and without fanfare, but those who knew him remember a man of gentle humor, quiet strength, and deep integrity. His legacy lives on not just in Howard Sprague's character, but in the quiet dignity with which he lived and left this world. Few people expected a woman in her late 50s to become one of Mayberry's most endearing voices, but Hope Summers defied expectations in every way. As Clara Edwards, she played the well-meaning, slightly nosy neighbor with warmth and perfect comedic timing, but her journey to television stardom was anything but typical. Hope was a widow who had raised children on her own, having lost her husband when her kids were still young. Before stepping into the spotlight, she was a dedicated teacher and community theater director in rural Illinois. Her passion for performance was always alive, even when life demanded practicality. Her television career began in earnest in the 1950s, when most actresses were already being shown the door. She broke through, not with glamour, but with character. Her voice became famous nationwide as the original voice of Mrs. Butterworth in syrup commercials. She also appeared on The Rifleman, Gunsmoke, and The Mary Tyler Moore Show, always bringing a believable human warmth to her roles. Hope worked steadily until shortly before her death at age 77. She passed peacefully, having lived a rich and meaningful life that defied the narrow roles often prescribed to women of her generation. On and off screen, she embodied kindness, courage, and grace. Her legacy is a quiet reminder that sometimes greatness finds us when we least expect if we're willing to answer the call. To viewers of The Andy Griffith Show, the arrival of Briscoe Darling and his musically chaotic clan always meant one thing: memorable mischief and Appalachian magic. With a grizzled face, dry wit, and ever-present banjo, Denver Pyle gave life to Briscoe's strong, silent patriarch whose gruff exterior hid an unexpectedly tender heart. Off-screen, Denver Pyle's journey was as rugged and fascinating as any character he played. Before acting, he worked as a laborer in the oil fields and proudly served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. He didn't break into Hollywood until the late 1940s, when he began appearing in dozens of westerns, dramas, and B-movies. But it was television first in The Andy Griffith Show, and later as Uncle Jesse in The Dukes of Hazzard, that brought him enduring fame. Yet Pyle never let stardom go to his head. Beneath the gruff screen persona was a man of deep conviction and immense generosity. Throughout his life, he remained committed to supporting veterans, and later in his career, he quietly became one of the most philanthropic actors of his era. Few fans knew that his final public act was a profound one. He donated millions to a college scholarship fund for underprivileged youth, believing deeply in the power of education to transform lives. Denver Pyle passed away on Christmas Day, 1997 from lung cancer at age 77. A quiet exit for a man who had given so much laughter and life to television. He didn't need awards or headlines. His legacy lives on every time someone chuckles at Briscoe's deadpan wisdom or strums a banjo in tribute. He was more than a character actor. He was a storyteller, a patriot, and a generous soul who never stopped giving. When Charlene Darling lit up the screen with her bright eyes, sweet smile, and angelic singing voice, she didn't just entertain, she enchanted. Played by the radiant Maggie Peterson, Charlene was the heart of the Darling family, tender, headstrong, and completely unforgettable. Maggie's role on The Andy Griffith Show was small in screen time, but massive in impact. Her chemistry with Andy and her charming musical duets brought a sense of authenticity and warmth that became some of the show's most beloved moments. With her natural comedic timing and genuine musical gifts, Maggie made Charlene more than a mountain girl, she made her real. Off-camera, Maggie's life was just as fascinating. A gifted vocalist, she toured the country with the Ernie Mariani Trio, performing in nightclubs and television variety shows before Hollywood took notice. Later, when she stepped away from the spotlight, she pivoted to a behind-the-scenes role, working as a respected location scout in Las Vegas for film and television productions, a second career that few fans ever knew about. Her life took a quieter turn when she left the industry to care for her ailing husband, jazz musician Gus Mancuso. Though she disappeared from the public eye, she remained active in fan circles and Andy Griffith reunions. Maggie never sought fame-only connection, kindness, and authenticity. She found all three. When she passed away in 2022 at the age of 81, tributes poured in from generations of fans. She had lived a full life, but her presence on screen remains as timeless as ever. Even now, Charlene's sweet mountain melodies echo across reruns, a reminder of a simpler, sweeter time and of the woman who brought them to life. George Lindsay will always be remembered for his lovable portrayal of Goober Pyle on The Andy Griffith Show, a wide-eyed, grinning auto mechanic with a heart of gold and a laugh that could melt the hardest of days. With his signature overalls and affable southern drawl, Goober embodied small-town simplicity, joy, and comedic charm. He was the kind of character audiences didn't just laugh at, they cherished him like an old friend. But behind the cheerful facade of Goober was a man of great depth and ambition. Lindsay grew up in rural Alabama with dreams that stretched far beyond comedic typecasting. A graduate of Florence State Teachers College and an aspiring serious actor, he initially envisioned himself as an educator or dramatic stage performer. He even studied at the American Theater Wing in New York, honing his craft in hopes of bringing layered characters to life. However, the explosive popularity of The Andy Griffith Show and later Hee Haw pigeonholed him into a comedic mold that he couldn't quite break out of. Hollywood, as it often does, saw only one side of him. Though audiences adored Goober, Lindsay longed for opportunities to show the world more of what he could do. His dreams of complex roles were quietly shelved, and his creative frustrations, though rarely voiced, were deeply felt. Outside of acting, Lindsay's life was a mix of highs and solitary lows. His marriage to Joanne Herbert ended in divorce, and he spent much of his later life alone, yet he never let that solitude harden his heart. On the contrary, he became one of Alabama's most generous philanthropists, donating over $1 million to the Special Olympics and endowing scholarships for underprivileged youth. To many in his hometown, he was more than a celebrity, he was a hometown hero. He passed away peacefully at the age of 83. His estate was modest, not reflective of a man who had once been a television staple, but he left behind something far more valuable than money. He left behind love. In a fitting tribute, a road in his hometown of Jasper, Alabama now bears his name, a small but lasting symbol of the joy he gave to millions. George Lindsay may have spent a career in someone else's shadow, but he walked through life shining his own quiet light. Helen Crump, the poised and perceptive schoolteacher of The Andy Griffith Show, was more than just Andy Taylor's love interest. She was the emotional center of Mayberry. Helen represented dignity, intellect, and quiet power, a woman who could hold her ground with kindness and command respect without ever raising her voice. That grace came from the woman who played her, Annette Corso, a deeply thoughtful actress whose real life mirrored the introspection of her most famous role. Annette wasn't your typical television starlet of the 1960s. She was classically trained, having studied drama at Northwestern University before diving into the world of method acting with none other than Lee Strasberg, the legendary mentor to Marlon Brando and Al Pacino. Annette brought a level of emotional truth to Helen Crump that made her stand out in a genre filled with caricatures. You didn't watch Helen, you believed in her. Despite her talent, Annette was never one to chase the limelight. She turned down publicity, kept her private life sealed from reporters, and remained unmarried, childless, and content to live quietly. But behind the quiet image lay one of Mayberry's most enduring and whispered secrets, a real-life romantic relationship between Annette and her co-star, Andy Griffith. Though Andy was married at the time, several biographies and crew accounts later confirmed that the two shared a deep, passionate, and private love that spanned several years. Their relationship was cloaked in discretion, fiercely protected from gossip columns and fanfare. Professionally, Annette continued acting in various television roles, most notably as a recurring character in Matlock, where she reunited with Griffith years later. Yet to fans, she would always be Helen Crump. Despite that association, Annette never sought to escape it. She embraced it quietly, knowing the role had left a meaningful imprint on American hearts. When she was diagnosed with cancer in the mid-1990s, she made no public announcements, no pleas for sympathy, no interviews. She simply stepped away from public life. On the 6th of November, 1995, just 3 days after her 62nd birthday, she passed away quietly. There were no grand obituaries, no celebrity tributes, or red carpet memorials. Just a silence that somehow suited her, dignified, respectful, and profound. In life and in death, Annette Corso remained the epitome of Grecian actress who never needed noise to be heard, never needed spectacle to shine. She was loved quietly, remembered deeply, and admired eternally. He only appeared in 5 episodes, just 5, but Ernest T. Bass left an impact so loud, so chaotic, and so wildly entertaining that he became one of the most iconic characters in the Andy Griffith Show's entire run. With his manic energy, gravelly voice, and signature rock-throwing tantrums, Bass was Mayberry's most unpredictable guest-a-lovable rascal, with no filter and no breaks. And behind that whirlwind was the genius of Howard Morris, a man whose comedic timing was unmatched. Morris's portrayal of Ernest T. was a masterclass in controlled chaos. Every twitch, every snarl, every offbeat line delivery was crafted with purpose. Though Bass was the town's comic tornado, Morris brought him to life with a strange sort of innocence, a man who didn't quite fit into society but desperately wanted to be accepted. That's what made audiences love him. He was ridiculous, yes, but he was also vulnerable. What many fans didn't know was that Howard Morris was also a respected director and voice actor whose creative reach went far beyond Ernest T. He directed numerous episodes of classic sitcoms like Hogan's Heroes and The Andy Griffith Show itself. In animation, his voice gave life to beloved characters in the Flintstones, the Jetsons, and Archie Comics cartoons. His comedic instincts were so sharp, so naturally attuned to rhythm and surprise, that he could move effortlessly between mediums. And yet, for all his on-screen bravado, Morris was known among peers as a gentle, soft-spoken soul. Offstage, he was kind, introspective, and deeply appreciative of his craft. He didn't crave celebrity, thrived on creativity. His passing in 2005 from heart failure at the age of 85 marked the end of an era, but his legacy continues wherever there's a burst of laughter from Ernest T's unforgettable outbursts. Howard Morris showed us that even the wildest characters can come from the kindest hearts. He made us laugh, startled us with joy, and reminded us that a little chaos now and then can be a beautiful thing. To the casual viewer, Emmett Clark, the mild-mannered fix-it shop owner, may have seemed like just another background character in Mayberry. But those who watched closely saw the subtle genius of Paul Hartman, a performer whose artistry was in the quiet beats, the offhand glances, and the perfectly timed reactions. Before he arrived in Mayberry, Hartman was already a legend on Broadway. Alongside his wife Grace, he starred in dance reviews and earned a Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical. In the 1940s and 1950s, he was hailed as one of America's greatest stage performance and innovator in comedic dance and physical storytelling. By the time he joined The Andy Griffith Show, Hartman was older, his Broadway years behind him, but even in his later roles, he brought dignity and professionalism. As Emmett, he offered a steady presence, a counterbalance to the town's quirkier characters. He wasn't loud or flashy, but he anchored the scenes with his calm demeanor and quiet humor. Off-screen, Hartman was known as a kind, thoughtful man who carried himself with humility, despite a resume most actors would envy. He didn't need the spotlight, simply loved the work. Sadly, Hartman died of a heart attack in 1973 at the age of 69. His passing was largely overshadowed by other Hollywood news at the time, but those who knew his contributions never forgot them. His legacy is quieter than most, but no less profound. Paul Hartman reminded us that not all heroes of the stage and screen shout. Some, like Emmett Clark, simply show up, do their job, and make everyone around them shine a little brighter. In the whimsical town of Mayberry, where common sense ruled the day, Mayor Roy Stoner often felt like the one square peg in a round hole. Played by the wonderfully expressive Parlay Bear, Stoner was the embodiment of old-school bureaucracy-earnest, occasionally overbearing, and frequently baffled by Andy Taylor's laid-back wisdom. His presence added a layer of comic tension to the show, a reminder that even in the friendliest towns, red tape could still find its way in. But there was far more to Parlay Bear than his role as the befuddled mayor. Long before he arrived in Mayberry, Bear had carved out a legendary career in the golden age of radio, most famously voicing Chester on the original Gunsmoke radio series for nearly 10 years. His voice became a staple in American households, conveying everything from deep emotion to quick-fire wit. In a time before television dominated, Bear was one of the country's most recognizable audio actors. Transitioning to television and film, Bear compiled an astounding 250-plus credits over his career, effortlessly moving between comedies, dramas, and even animated series. His versatility made him a sought-after character actor, but he never let fame define him. Off-screen, Bear was a pillar of his community, deeply committed to civic engagement, arts advocacy, and mentoring the next generation of performers. Young actors often recalled how he took time to offer encouragement, feedback, or just a kind word between scenes. Parlay Bear passed away at the age of 88, leaving behind a career that spanned radio, television, and film, a body of work that celebrated storytelling in all its forms. Though his face may not be as instantly recognizable as some of his co-stars, his impact on the entertainment industry is undeniable. In Mayberry, he may have played the well-meaning obstacle, but in real life, he was a bridge builder between generations, mediums, and hearts.